Call to order the January 27th, 2020 regular business meeting of the Waynesboro City Council. And Vice Mayor Henderson, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd remind all those in attendance this evening that if you'd wish to speak, we've got a sign-in sheet towards the back of the room, and we'd welcome an opportunity to hear from you this evening, and so please feel free to sign up. First item of business this evening is a motion to adopt or amend the agenda for tonight's meeting. Do you have a motion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we move the citizen comment period from the last part of the meeting, move it up just after number 4, matters from City Council.
Wonderful. We have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. Next item is to consider the...
Mr. Mayor, do we have to accept the whole agenda after that, or was that?
I was going to go with accepting the agenda as amended. Thank you. The first item following that is our consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
What? You didn't adopt the agenda?
So we do have to.
Single motion.
So you have to do another motion.
Okay.
Okay.
So we have a motion to amend the agenda. We had a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is the consent agenda. Right?
To accept the agenda as amended now.
We're good. Okay. To accept the agenda as presented and amended. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. First item of business following that is to approve the consideration of the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Number 4 are matters from council members. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share this evening?
I've got one, a reminder to constituents that my monthly open meeting is February the 4th, next Tuesday, at French Press at 9 a.m. So that is just an open meeting. Whatever people want to talk about, we will try to tackle.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
I just want to go on record as last meeting didn't go so great, as everybody knows. Most of that was because it started off rocky, and it started off rocky because the way I delivered my first message. I want to apologize to the council, and I want to apologize to the citizens of Waynesboro. These folks had nothing to do with the way I started out that meeting. I had everything wrote down on a script. I left the script. I didn't go by the script. So I messed that up from the start. Tonight, we're going to come back and work as a council. So accept my apologies, please.
Thank you very much. With that, we have our citizen comment period.
So the first speaker is Mr. Herman Wells, followed by Mr. Dwight Williams.
Sir, I'd like to speak, but it's really only applicable if you pass the resolution for the constitutional city.
Okay.
Since I don't know if you're going to pass it, I don't know what to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you wouldn't mind maybe coming to the podium for just a moment. Yes. So we've got that on the docket, and I think we're going to have that as a conversation. What we wanted to do is just afford another opportunity to sort of express your view or otherwise. I know you spoke very eloquently at the previous meeting, and I know just to carry on a little bit from the previous meeting, very much I know we all valued that experience and hearing from folks. We've all enjoyed a multitude of meetings. I mean, I would say several dozen over the last couple of weeks. So it's your pleasure. If you'd like to make a statement now.
Okay, I'm gonna assume then, sir, that you're gonna pass this thing.
Okay.
All right, so here's my statement if you're gonna pass it. All right? My name is Herman Wells. I live on Magnolia Avenue in Waynesboro, and I supported the proposal for Waynesboro to become a Second Amendment sanctuary city. I am, however, pleased that the City Council decided to bring a resolution before the council to support a Second Amendment constitutional city. If you had asked me if this resolution would ever see the light of day again after the meeting at Kate Collins Middle School, I would have stated no way. So I applaud the council for bringing the resolution to a vote this evening. I understand why citizens acted the way they did at the middle school, and I understand why the resolution was withdrawn. We have become a society where there is no longer room for negotiation on issues that come between us. Lines are often drawn in the proverbial sand, and citizens will accept nothing less than a total win for the policies they espouse. For the citizens of Waynesboro, actions by the state, to include rhetoric by our governor and the legislature, made them feel helpless with their backs against the wall. I would like to think they turned to their community leaders for help in the same way you look toward family in troubled times. For our council, they were apprised by their lawyer of the Dillon Rule and chose the only way they felt they could legally support the people of Waynesboro. They had to inform the community of their decision, at which point the meeting turned into a shouting match and the resolution was withdrawn. Let me be clear. I do not support any personal attacks, which there were several, aimed at members of this community or our city council. The facts are important. Personal attacks are counterproductive. Holding the line is, however, what Americans do. It is what they have become famous for, particularly in times of war and strife. In politics and diplomacy, however, holding the line rarely works. These days, everyone is holding the line and has developed a my way or the highway mentality. There are times in politics and local policy we need to hold the line, but the tactics simply cannot be used over and over again. The issues that we face today are very complex, often residing in the gray areas of our nation's rules and cultural norms. As a result, a constitutional city was truly our only recourse. Though this may not have been the desired outcome of myself and my fellow citizens, I believe it to be a win. We are one of the few cities in the Old Dominion to join the sanctuary movement in any way. Most cities have refused to even take this up as a measure to be considered. We were bold enough to take up this measure. For those who a Second Amendment sanctuary city was the only recourse, I ask, how many of them in their daily lives have everything they want exactly how they want it? Do they have the perfect house, the perfect car, the perfect job? Probably not. But they have the best they can have based on what they have to work with. This is a fundamental fact of life. Take what you have and make the best of it. I believe, based on what this community was given, we made the best of it. Could it be better? Yes, it could. Will it be better? That's up to the citizens and our elected officials. Just like it is up to each of us to make our own lives better, more perfect, more to our liking, it is up to the citizens of this city to make our city more to their liking. I hope that through all of this, the citizens of Waynesboro have learned that greater involvement in our community's government and local affairs can make a major difference in everyone's life.
Great, thank you very much.
So again, Mr. Dwight Williams, followed by Mr. Jim Wood.
Mr. Williams, would you mind stating your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, sir. My name is Dwight Williams. I live on Jefferson Lane.
And I'm sorry, Dwight, if I could just for a moment, I didn't, we know the routine, the green, yellow, and red.
Yes. Red means keep going, right?
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, the council. Thank you again for having me this evening. My name is Dwight Williams. I'd first like to start off by saying thank you to each of you for listening to your residents. You know, it could have been much easier for you all to do what Harrisonburg did and what Stanton did and turn a deaf ear to what your residents have said. You know, those places, their majority stood up and said, hey, we would like to see a Second Amendment sanctuary city, and they didn't listen to them. Instead, they gave in to the dissenting voices, and we're seeing that essentially Waynesboro is the only city in this area that has the backbone to tell Richmond, hey, we're not taking any more of this. These proposed gun laws, which are similar to the ones on the books in places like D.C., L.A., and Chicago, only serve to deny the citizens of their right to self-preservation against people who are evil, wishing to do them harm. And I know you all know that. And because you are considering a Second Amendment or a constitutional city resolution, I'm going to skip through some of my notes because it was kind of written with you guys not passing it. This was written about a week or so ago. Came in from LA today for this, so bear with me. Some people here will argue that Waynesboro is nothing like those cities at all, and that's a fair point. We're not. We have no gun crimes, no criminals, no gangs, no one breaks the law, no one speeds down Main Street, and there's no drug problems here. We're about as boring as Mayberry. But the fact of the matter is that while we may not have the same kind of gun crimes in Chicago, the crimes still exist here, and they're not going away anytime soon. It's a function of not the guns themselves, but of evil people's morality. Not long ago, people derived their morality from going to church and learning about the Bible and God Almighty. But today we've embraced killing babies before and after birth. We've embraced over 100 different genders instead of the 2 that He created. We don't talk to our kids about what's right or wrong anymore. We removed God from schools. We don't even discuss Him in our homes. And the church has more interest in keeping their tax exemption than preaching morality from the Word of God. And we wonder why there's a morality problem in this country. It's not guns. It's all about morals. The morality problem means that people that are evil will do evil things. They will obtain whatever firearm that they want, regardless of what the law says. But we law-abiding citizens are fighting for our right to keep and bear arms by strongly encouraging the passing of a constitutional city resolution that tells Richmond that Waynesboro will not go quietly into the night, that we will not give up our right without a fight, that we will join our other fellow Second Amendment-loving Virginians in the surrounding counties and towns and standing against this tyranny from Richmond. I've had the opportunity to have coffee with some of you a few weeks ago, and I appreciate that opportunity. I understand the thinking process that went through how you all came up with this resolution, and because of that, I strongly support your proposed constitutional city resolution, and I ask that you vote on it tonight unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Jim Wood, followed by Mr. Joe Williams.
Mr. Wood, if you wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the record, please.
Jim Wood. I'm on Mount Vernon Street. All right. First off, I want to say, thank you to Vice Mayor Henderson for what he said, his words. It was a little contentious on everybody's part at our last meeting, and things may not have turned out the way we wanted, but that's part of being a part of our republic. I said a few things because I am passionate about this subject. I work in the firearms industry. I'm a firearms instructor. I'm a gun dealer. And I had some things I thought about saying when I first got there, but things kind of snowballed. I did get a little carried away in my words, but I'm no less passionate, and I no less mean what I had to say about my love for this country and our Second Amendment. When I got out of the Army in 2008, now, like I said, I moved my family here in 2005. In 2008, when I got out of the Army, one of the things I did is I went back to school to finish my degree. I'm a guy with a history degree. History has always been something I've always been, very interested in. It was just kind of my thing. I never had it as a career because I'd already had a career. But it's something that, that I have followed and studied my whole life. And one of the things I liked about Waynesboro was the namesake, Mad Anthony Wayne. That man was a patriot. There was a difference between patriots and loyalists. The loyalists still followed by the laws of the king. All right, the patriots are the one who had a vision to create a better nation, in order to make people free and to give them the right to make their own decisions, their own choices, and be held accountable for their own actions. And we're all accountable for our own actions. This country has had good times, it's had bad times, it's been highs, it's been lows. Unfortunately, Kate Collins the other night, I feel like it kind of was, even though it was a strong voice, it kind of dipped down into some of the lows in some cases. And we were all guilty on that part. But we have highs too. And the fact that you all have come back and studied and put this down and put as much attention into it as you have is greatly appreciated, because it can be one of our highs. Now, I've done a lot of things in my life. I served my country in the 82nd Airborne Division. I served my country and my state in the 29th Infantry Division. I've went to war for this country, and I've went to war for this state. I've done good things. Like I said, I've done bad things. I've had successes, and I've had failures. One thing that I try my absolute best is to never be a failure at is to be a parent. I have a 17-year-old who I'll get emotional because I'm so extremely proud of him, you couldn't imagine. He's a senior up here at Fishburne. He's an Eagle Scout. He's a member of the National Honor Society. This kid is a captain of the football team, a captain of the lacrosse. He is the all-American dream for a father. He's done everything right. He's worked hard. He just got accepted to his first pick of schools. And so far, I've managed not to screw it up. When I look at him, I look at our future. And then I also look at myself as a student of history. And what I've always wanted to do, be that good example to him. I remember the Virginia Patriots online. We're an organization that's currently over 4,000 strong, not as big as some, bigger than others. But what we want to do is we want people to understand what's going on. We don't try to sway anybody. We put the news out there. We're a source for people to pick their candidates, to pick the people that they feel like that would do the job best. And I've been online, and I've been lucky enough so far that a few of my videos have gone viral. And in those viral videos, I have told people, get off your butts and do something. Go vote. Be a voice in your community. Stand up for where you live. Stand up for where just not your community, your state, and don't expect somebody else to do it for you. All those things come together in one thing, that a very labored decision that I have made here in the last week. Today, I went to the registrar's office and I picked up my packet, and I'm going to be that good example to my son. In a fair republic, in the democratic process that we practice, I will be running for city council in this next election. Now, I hope that everybody understands that we try not to get as passionate as we did at Kate Collins, and it will be a fair, even process, and hopefully the better man or lady will win. But I cannot be a hypocrite, tell people to do it and not do it myself. So if anybody would like,
Thank
I
you.
have my sign-up paper to sign to get on the ballot.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Joe Williams, followed by Ms. Marcia Geiger and Ms. Ellie Puglisi.
Hello.
Hey, if you mind
Joe
stating-
Williams,
Thank you.
210 Bocadale Road. Thank you all for taking time to be here tonight. I appreciate everybody's apologies for what they thought they done wrong. No one ever really done anything wrong. It got out of hand because we had to have that meeting. I'm gonna make everybody's job here a little easier today. As city council and the mayor and whoever, the city manager, you can make decisions and vote on your personal opinions about whether we should close a street or fund a project. All those are personal opinions. And it's a matter of weighing what's good and what's bad for the community, what it costs, all that good stuff. But when it comes down to a constitutional issue, it's not an issue. You all were elected and committed to serve that. That's number one. You shouldn't even have to consider that. After that, all this other stuff you can vote on. But if it's a constitutional issue, it shouldn't even be brought to a meeting. I'm not a politician like some of these other speakers. I'm just it's hot or it's cold kind of a guy. And so, as silly as that may sound, I hope y'all understand my point. Y'all put yourself through a whole lot of worry and aggravated people and unnecessary phone calls when it was a constitutional issue. So it's not to be debated. The only people that can debate it are the people who want to come in and destroy this country. Now, some of them are here and some of them are across the water, but we're not here to do that. So I thank you for your time. Appreciate it. I hope the vote turns out like it should, but it's just the Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Name, state your name and address for the record,
Thank you.
please.
Marcia Geiger, 701 Locust Avenue. I want to commend the council for taking the input from its citizens and holding a forum. and to continue to take input from the citizens on this matter. You've proposed a resolution to name Waynesboro constitutional, or city of Virginia, and it's our hope that this designation sends a strong message to our legislators in Richmond. That's who needs to hear us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So Ms. Puglisi, followed by Ms. Cheryl Carey and Amber Siren. Ms. Amber Siren.
Good evening.
Ellie, good evening. Ellie Puglisi, 1424 Monroe Street. Good evening again, Mr. Mayor, council members, everyone. Thank you for considering a resolution again to make Waynesboro a constitutional city. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Henderson, for meeting with us last week and explaining the legalities concerning a sanctuary city status for Waynesboro. After reading the constitutional city resolution and speaking with you all, I am supporting this resolution, although I must say it is sad that we even have to take a stand this way, being a city in the United States of America. But from speaking with the two of you, I do believe that you want the best for the citizens of Waynesboro, and I am thankful for that. Nevertheless, I do hope circumstances in our state government strongly encourage each one of us here this evening, in the audience as well, each one of us here to vote, especially if you have neglected to do so in the past. I consider it a duty as a citizen of our Commonwealth and of our great country. Thank you all again for your commitment to the city of Waynesboro and its citizens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Cheryl Carey.
Ms. Carey, state your name and address for the record, please.
Cheryl Carey, 820 Fairway Drive. Good evening. I'm not here to talk about the gun stuff. I did that last week. I'm here, I'd like to ask if there's a time when we can actually ask you a question or state our concerns and get immediate answer if you have it, or feedback, instead of us sometimes coming up here and saying, hey, I don't like this or that, and then we're gone. I'd like a time where we can actually come here and have a little feedback. That's one thing. The other thing is driving habits in Waynesboro, and everyone has got to know this. It seems like red lights are optional. You are at a light, and I know everyone knows this. You go green, and you have to look because someone is running a red light, hard red. They're texting, they're handheld. You raise their taxes. If you want to make Waynesboro safe, get the police officers to stand on Windy Grove, over up on Rosser, Main Street. Start writing tickets. It'll make us safer, and it'll fill your coffers, and it'll get the word out that you shouldn't go through a red light. I don't know how many times, and I've come from 40 minutes north of DC where traffic is heavy. My insurance went up when I moved here, which was incredible to me, but I see how people drive. No directionals. When we see someone put a directional on, we're like, oh my God, a directional. Texting at the red light, watching, keeping looking up and down, the head, they're not doing anything. When we had a power outage over a year ago and the traffic lights were out, it's supposed to be four-way stop. Everyone stops, go, stop. It was whoever could run through it. And again, almost hit. I've had people going over the lines and beeping them, looking up, and they're swaying back. That same time with that accident, we were up in Stanton. They had the horses that you put the stop signs on, stands that say stop on each one. It was crazy here. It's very dangerous driving here. I almost feel safer if it was a drunk driver. I've never had so many problems here with people, how they drive. And my other concern is the two buildings down on Main Street. Right now, you don't smell it. But those two N ones that you have the warning signs on, I don't know who owns them, the mildew that comes off those buildings, the spores that must be floating in the air. Not only does it look bad, it stinks. It's a health hazard. So those buildings, whoever owns them, should be torn down, cleaned up, something, because it's a concern to me just walking by, and I have friends come here. We go down to Stella's, the Greenleaf. Those are the two big draws, as everyone knows, and it smells. And I think those are my two things. But I would really like a time when we can have a question and answer and get feedback immediately if you know the answer. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Ms. Amber Siren, followed by Jacob Lipscomb, and then Ms. Jeannie McCutcheon.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I just wanted to come up here tonight and first thank you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Henderson, for speaking with us last week. I really appreciate you taking the time to come to us and explain what was in the constitutional city resolution and really explaining why Waynesboro chose to take the stand they did, and I really appreciate that. I appreciate that you take the time to talk to your citizens here and explain to us. I do appreciate that, and I want you to know that I personally support what you have done and that I feel like you are doing good things for this city, and I appreciate that, and that's simply all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Mr. Jacob Lipscomb, and then Ms. Jeannie McCutcheon.
Good evening. If you mind stating your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, sir. Jacob Lipscomb, 1628 Monroe Street. I appreciate you taking the opportunity again to listen to your citizens here and what we have to say. I understand that the resolution that is being passed is kind of an all or nothing thing. So I think it's okay that we can say that we support what is written. My message isn't necessarily for you. I understand that you have to do what you have to do, but it's mostly for Richmond. And, you know, there was a very small group of men in the 1700s that were very revered. And they met in Williamsburg and decided against treason and what those penalties would have caused them and their family. And it had nothing to do with what the laws were at the time, because it was everything against what the laws were at the time. And they stood there and they stood for what was right and not what was for the laws. I feel like the resolution is a bit watered down, and I think I speak for everyone when I say that I think we really wanted to stand with the Second Amendment because of how bold of a statement it is. I think that I think it's hard to express the feelings of everyone, especially when it become a shouting match. And I appreciate your apology, Mr. Henderson. That's nice. I think it was just a conflict of interest on how it came out, like you had said at the beginning.
No doubt.
And that was kind of how it set the mood for the room for the whole 4 hours. But in this life, there's two people that's willing to die for you: the Lord Jesus Christ and the American soldier. One for your soul and one for your freedom. And when these gun laws are passed, you know, outside of our area and the surrounding counties, that's putting Americans against Americans. And I don't think that people realize that. It's not going to be somebody, you know, random coming to your door. It's going to be an American citizen. If they was to come and take your firearms, that's putting their life in danger, the people around you. And how dare someone try to turn its citizens against each other? You know, especially when it comes to something that's so near and dear in the history of this country and this state. I just give people time to realize that the near and dearness in their heart to the Second Amendment and the rest of the constitutional amendments is so close and hits so close to home, because the two great reasons why this country is phenomenal is the people who hate it and talk bad about it never leave, and there's a list of 40 million that are ready to come in here at any time. So it's not the laws in the Constitution that are disheartening, because people still want to be here. And the reason why they want to be here is the Constitution. So thank you so much for your time and hearing everybody out again. I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. If you mind stating your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Jeannie McCutcheon. I live at 1922 East Main Street. And I'm not here about any gun things or anything else. I have two items, fire safety and traffic. But before I go there, I want to thank you all for finally getting Florence Avenue Bridge fixed. What a blessing. We've been on this journey for a long time, and I say that on behalf of the PERCA organization that we've been dealing with Mr. Shaw and Mr. Hamp and several others. Now I'd like to say this. I'd like to let you all know, because some of you are fairly new, that Waynesboro annexed out the east end of Main Street back in the late 1940s and 50s. And they never put a fire hydrant further out. The fire hydrant that is out there that we have to be used for the 1800, 1900, and the 2000 block of East Main Street is on the right side of 250 going east. I hope you follow me. This hydrant is at least 1,500 to 2,000 feet, or maybe a quarter of a mile away from the house that caught on fire. That is my neighbor. That fire was Wednesday, January 8th, 2020. And there are other further houses that already go back to a business up there. So if they would have to use that fire hydrant, you know how far away there is a fire hydrant. And the city annexed out, that belongs to us. Well, I've kind of complained because I'm on the end of the city line and my water pressure tend to be low, but I didn't push it. I said, I'm on the end of the line. It'll be all right. I just accept it. But last year, there was a fire up on 64, a car fire. And the tanker trucks had to come down and get water. And I'm glad they were able to do that. But they went down to the corner of Kirby Street and filled up their water tankers. And while they did that, several of our houses had no water whatsoever. I got calls and people are saying, "Do you have water?" I said, "What's going on?" So I called EOC and I reported to them, so it should be on record. But since that fire on Wednesday, on January 8th, 20, at my neighbor's home, it caused me to say, bring this concern to the city council. Me and my husband, we sat for 2.5 hours on the gravel road pulled off there near my home at 1922 East Main Street because we could not get into our driveway. The firemen had to get water from the fire hydrant that I just told you how far away it was. It took them some time to get water there. My neighbor said he was lucky to be able to get his wife and his granddaughter out of the house safely. They got into a car and they sat there and he timed the firemen 8 minutes before they could get water. Watching the firemen trying to get water, I should say. Probably if we had had a fire hydrant closer up on 250, he might not have lost his home. It might not have been a total loss. I want to point out, though, the houses that on 250 in that area are all on the left side if you're going, or if you're coming west, go east, okay? They sit pretty much high up in the air. So there is a need for fire safety. Thank God it was not Saturday, June 11th, when all of you remember that we had the high winds because my friend, a tree fell in her house, in her yard, on her car. We could have had a fire, or say a forest fire. We could have. Thank God that it didn't happen. So I think that's a concern, since you are fixing that area. Okay? The other was traffic. I'll be back to talk to you about that traffic safety. Thank you.
That's it, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all so much for your comments. Next item on the agenda this evening is item 6, and that is to consider adopting a resolution supporting the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution and naming Waynesboro, Virginia, a constitutional city of Virginia. Is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to make the motion to propose the declaration of a constitutional city here in Waynesboro, as is in the agenda.
Great, thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Great, thank you. Is there any discussion?
I would like to say a few things.
Sure.
I want to speak briefly, and thank you again for comments today and comments at our last meeting. As we have said, we've all spoken to many people of various different opinions on this, and I think tried to hear and understand what people are bringing to the table on this issue. And there are two things that sort of have themed or come to my mind as themes as I've had those conversations. The first thing, when I started practicing medicine about 20 years ago here in the Valley, one of my colleagues told me, you know, you're really going to like working with patients here because they're well-grounded and they show lots of common sense. And I have found that to be true. So that's my first thought is let's show our common sense. The second theme is don't be afraid of tough conversations. As one of the other speakers said this evening, you know, there's a lot of issues that we find tough times in finding any middle ground on. And as my job as a doctor, there are often times that I have to have tough conversations. And what I have found is that it's much better to have those conversations than hide from them. And so that's what I would sort of bring together here. I think there have been some individuals that would rather drown out a conversation right now, and I disagree with that approach. My two themes then come together, and I would say, let's show our common sense. Let's show Virginia our common sense. Adopt this proposal, but not be afraid of the tough conversations. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Hofstadter. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to add? Great, appreciate those comments. All those in favor of adopting the resolution as submitted and seconded, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you all. Next on the agenda this evening is proclamation of the month of February as Black History Month in the city of Waynesboro, and to present the proclamation to Ms. Stella Randolph of the Black History Museum of Waynesboro. And with that,
Give it just a second.
yep. We'll give a little space for those that would like to leave. Ms. Randolph, how are you doing?
I'm fine.
Long time no see.
Yes.
Thanks for being here tonight.
I'm Estella Randolph. I live at 452 Port Republic Road here in the beautiful Waynesboro, Virginia. And I'm here to receive the proclamation on behalf of Black History Month. I want to say to Mayor Short and the City Council, I'm appreciative of all of you. I thank you so much because when I have the Martin Luther King March, you come out and you support. And you know, as a city, when your officials come out and support anything that anyone in the city of Waynesboro is doing, and you are showing your time, that shows that you care. And so from me and my staff at the Rosenwald Black Heritage Museum, we want to say thank you to the City Council here and to Mayor Short.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So we've got the proclamation, and so I'll go and read that this evening. Whereas Dr. Carter Goodwin Woodson, distinguished African-American author, editor, scholar, and historian, who is known as the father of Black history, founded the Association for the Study of African-American Life and History in September 1915 and launched Negro History Month in 1926. And whereas since 1976, every American president has proclaimed February as Black History Month. And whereas the theme of this year's celebration is African Americans and the Vote, marking the 150th anniversary and 15th Amendment, which gave the right of black men and women to vote following the Civil War. Black men to vote following the Civil War. Whereas 2020 also marks the centennial of the 19th Amendment and the culmination of the women's suffrage movement. Whereas the year's theme recognizes the struggle for voting rights among both black men and women throughout the American history. Therefore, be resolved, the Mayor of Waynesboro, Virginia, on behalf of the City Council, takes great pleasure in recognizing February 2020 as Black History Month and urges all citizens to join in celebrating the accomplishments of African Americans during Black History Month and encourages the people of Waynesboro to recognize the many talents, achievements, and contributions that African Americans make to their communities. And be it further resolved that the clerk of the council transmit a copy of this resolution to the curator of the African American History Museum in Waynesboro and Rosenwald for appropriate distribution. Witness thereof, sign and so forth. Let me come on down there.
Thank you.
All right. Next on the agenda is to receive information regarding a proposed interregional transit service, Afton Express, providing commuter service between the Shenandoah Valley and Charlottesville, and consider endorsing a letter of commitment to support a grant application to fund the service. Mr. Hamp.
Mayor Short and members of council, studies indicate that more than 3,000 individuals reside in Waynesboro, Stanton, and Augusta County and commute to work in Charlottesville. The University of Virginia and the UVA Hospital are employers of many of these commuters. Since 2013, planners have considered opportunities to reduce traffic on Interstate 64, support the movement of workers, and the economic benefits accruing to individuals, employers, and communities. Collaboration between the Central Shenandoah Planning District Commission, the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission, their respective metropolitan planning organizations, and the Commonwealth's Department of Rail and Public Transportation have developed a proposal for interregional transit service, now named the Afton Express, to meet the identified commuter needs. This evening, Ms. Nancy Gorley and Ms. Bonnie Riedesel from the Central Shenandoah Planning District Commission are here to give you more information about the proposed Afton Express. And following that presentation and any questions you might have, the council is asked to endorse a grant application through its commitment to the identified proposed funding strategy for that 4-year period. So as we hear the information from Ms. Gorley, please anticipate a request to act this evening.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. I am Nancy Gorley, and I'm with the Central Shenandoah Planning District Commission. We plan and manage the Bright Public Transportation Service that operates 9 fixed routes and ADA-compliant paratransit service in Waynesboro, Stanton, and portions of Augusta County. The Bright service includes 3 bus routes that directly serve Waynesboro: the Waynesboro Circulator, the 250 Connector, and the Stewart's Draft Link. In fiscal year 2019, Bright Transit provided 275,000 passenger trips, and the number is tracking to exceed that this year. Passenger surveys indicate that the primary reason for riding Bright buses is for access to employment, medical services, and then shopping. So, as Mr. Hamp mentioned, the need for transit service to connect the Shenandoah Valley and Charlottesville has been discussed for many years, and it's been identified in various transportation planning documents. To further examine that need, a feasibility study was completed in 2017, and a key component of that study was a public survey, which received over 600 responses. Current commuters in this corridor reported the following trip purposes: 63% for work, 11% to run errands, 6% to access medical services, 5% to access educational opportunities, and the rest were mixed. 96% of those 600 respondents said there was definitely a need to have this kind of public transportation service. 40% said they would use it, and 56% they said they might likely use it. The Department of Rail and Public Transportation concurred with the conclusions of that feasibility study that laid the groundwork for a public transportation service. The state contracted with a consultant to complete a scope of work that included a service plan and a funding plan. A stakeholder group was assembled, which included Mr. Hamp and Mr. Jude representing Waynesboro, and they guide the process with the consultant. The work that was done in that study confirms that the need still certainly exists and perhaps has even grown since that initial feasibility study. Of particular note, UVA is the largest employer in this region. They provided the consultant with data on their employees' place of residence and commuting patterns. Of UVA's 20,583 employees, approximately 7%, or about 1,500, live in the Shenandoah Valley, including the Saul region. Approximately 65%, or almost 1,000, reside in the Shenandoah Valley within a 5-mile radius of the Waynesboro Park and Ride and the city of Stanton. The number of UVA employees who live in the Shenandoah Valley has increased 14% between 2015 and 2019, indicating that UVA employees are increasingly looking for housing in this region. In our region, most commuting trips to Charlottesville begin or end in Waynesboro, Stanton, Fishersville, or Stuarts Draft, with Waynesboro consistently being the highest trip origin and destination. Although the morning commute is primarily eastbound, interestingly, the commuting data demonstrated that about 500 vehicles traveled from Charlottesville and Albemarle to Waynesboro each morning. So Afton Express buses are proposed to include a stop on the return trip after they go to Charlottesville at the Waynesboro Bright Hub, where riders could connect to the local Bright buses. The stakeholder group agreed on the following service plans. The buses would operate 4 morning and 4 evening trips to accommodate various work schedules and medical appointments. The trips would originate from park and ride lots in Stanton, Fishersville, and Waynesboro, and they would serve multiple stops in Charlottesville, close to the University of Virginia, the University of Virginia Medical Center, downtown Charlottesville, and at 5th Street Station, which is the large retail development where Wegmans and Dick's Sporting Goods are. I'm not plugging them. Buses could also stop, if requested, at the Amtrak station in Charlottesville. The Waynesboro Park and Ride lot, the current lot at the Waynesboro Town Center, is scheduled for an expansion and improvement project, which includes paving, lighting, and a bus loop. This project is funded through the VDOT Smart Scale program and will occur in calendar year 2021. The actual construction of the improvements is planned to occur in 2 phases to allow continued use of the lot for carpoolers and transit service. The Central Shenandoah Planning District Commission would be the applicant and administrator of the grant funds for the service. Additionally, the existing service contract for the Bright Transit service, where Virginia Regional Transit actually operates, would be amended to include the delivery of the Afton Express service. Under the amendment, VRT, Virginia Regional Transit, would provide the drivers, the buses, the maintenance, supervision, and customer service functions related to the service. 3 buses would be needed to provide the service. 2 would operate each day, and there would be a spare. The buses would have capacity for 32 seated passengers. They would be equipped with clean diesel engines and a transmission appropriate for interstate highway speeds and to cross Afton Mountain. They would include a more comfortable passenger seat than what you find in the local buses, Wi-Fi service, and bike racks. All buses would be ADA compliant and include a wheelchair lift. Our guidance from the state is that we should submit the initial grant application by February 3rd, which is next Monday. For the initial 2 years of expenses under what is called their demonstration grant program. This grant program is designed to assist with startup of new transit services such as the Afton Express. It funds with state money at 80% and requires a 20% local match. Subsequent years of service would be funded under what is called the Rural Transit Program, and the Fishersville stop qualifies us for that, and that is about 78% federal and state funds and about 22% local match. The budget assumes that free rides would be offered for the initial 30 days of service to encourage commuters to try it, and there would be a ramping up period then of ridership when fare collection during the first year. Fares would be $3 each way, and there would be passes available at a reduced rate for regular riders. The stakeholder group considered various formulas for providing that required local match funding, and they concluded that this obligation should be split 50-50 between the partners west of the mountain and those east of the mountain. The regions would then determine within the east and the west how their funding would work. Although the initial local match funding isn't needed until July of this year, the state requires that a commitment of the local match from the partners, that 20%, be in place to accompany the February 3rd grant application, which is next Monday. We're asking for a multi-year commitment from stakeholders, as the buses will need to be purchased and capitalized by the contractor, and it does take some time to build ridership. Initial projections are that 90 riders would use the service, and as more people learn of the availability and convenience, the number would continue to grow. To date, commitments of support have been received from the City of Stanton, UVA, Charlottesville City, Augusta County, and Albemarle County. We are here tonight asking Waynesboro to consider supporting the service, and it is understood that any funding commitment is subject to the jurisdiction's budget and appropriation process. I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions of Nancy?
Is there an estimated budget for that first 20% of the layout?
It will cost approximately $300,000 per year, just under $300,000 to operate. The first year included in that demonstration grant period is some additional planning and ramping up.
Any other questions? All right. Hearing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so we've got our letter of commitment to consider this evening. Is there a motion to endorse the letter of commitment?
So moved.
Great, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Great. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all very much. All right. Next, we have to hold a public hearing to receive comment and consider introducing an ordinance approving a request by Waynesboro Hotel LLC to dissolve lot lines and vacate a portion of the undeveloped Chickerell Lane right-of-way, city tax map 51-18-3 and 51-18-4, to provide for the construction of Chickerell Lane and a new hotel. Mr. Juday.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thank you to Ms. Gorley for presenting the Afton Express. I just wanted to clarify for anybody watching that the budget amount to the city's commitment for that was a little under $11,000 for those first 2 years.
Thank you.
Not 300. But. All right. The application before us today is a right-of-way vacation for Chickerell Lane. Chickerell Lane is located around the exit 94 area off of Windy Grove Drive. This is the current configuration in that area. It was a subdivision that was set up but was never improved with this cul-de-sac right-of-way and a number of commercial lots off of Windy Grove Drive. The owner of the commercial lots is Waynesboro Hotel LLC, with whom the city has entered into a performance agreement for economic development purposes to incentivize the construction of a new mid-range hotel. As part of the deal, the owner will construct a city road in the existing right-of-way to access their hotel. The city is being asked to vacate this end cul-de-sac bulb here and then a little section of extraneous strip of right-of-way along the property line. Then the owner will dedicate a portion of new right-of-way in sort of a dogleg pattern next to that existing road, and that will allow for us to eventually provide rear access for patrons of Days Inn, Wendy's, and Silk Road to access out to Windy Grove Drive. Basically, the exit right here, I don't know if you've been out there to Silk Road recently, is terrible turning left out of, and eventually, for safety reasons, that'll almost certainly have to be closed. As it stands, that would be a significant diminishment of the property values in the property owner's eyes, and would be something we would most likely have to settle with them in court to do. The goal here is eventually to be able to construct an alternative exit out this way so that patrons would be able to enter from the highway and then would be able to turn left onto Windy Grove Drive at a different location and turn left onto Rosser Avenue eventually. We're not able to get an agreement with the Days Inn as part of this process to actually construct that road, but we have engineered part of it, and we've also gotten the right-of-way dedicated as well. And then the last part of this is that the owner is going to construct a hotel according to the city's performance agreement. We've asked that this right-of-way vacation be contingent on the recordation of a plat showing new lot lines. This is because this is sort of an odd shape out of the right-of-way, so we don't want to just do it on paper. We really need to have a plat shown, and the plat will consolidate the existing lots. This is a drawing of the engineered plans that we have for the road. This long section of road here at the bottom is the access point to Windy Grove Drive for the hotel, and that's the portion that will be constructed. The portion at the top there that kind of curves up connects to the Days Inn entrance and provides that alternative access point. And as I said, we've not been able to get an agreement from those property owners yet, but we've gone ahead and had the road engineered. So, and then the viewer's report was provided to you in the packet. We had 2 viewers who found no inconvenience to the public. One viewer felt that the turn radius was too sharp for large trucks, that there's a lot of large trucks at the Days Inn, and she wanted to ensure that they would eventually be able to turn out of that. This is engineered to normal road specifications, and we believe that it will not be difficult for smaller, normal-sized trucks to be able to get around it. Maybe very large semi-trucks will have to turn right onto Windy Grove Drive and go down to Home Depot and turn around and go back out, but we don't believe that that's a huge concern. Staff and viewers were all in favor of completing rear access to businesses off of Windy Grove Drive, but as I said, we don't have a property owner agreement yet. Staff recommends approval of, and conditioned on recordation of the attached plat, and we have an ordinance attached as well. Are there questions on this?
Any questions, Mr. Duday? All right, hearing none. Thanks, Luke. I will hereby open the public hearing.
No one has signed up to speak, Mr. Mayor.
All right, anybody? All right, I will close the public hearing. We have a motion to introduce the ordinance.
I'll make the motion.
Great, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Great, any discussion? All those in favor, I'm sorry, this, we've got a motion seconded, and the ordinance this evening will be considered at our follow-up meeting at the next meeting. Yeah.
Yes, sir. If I could have 1 second, just by way of explanation. Periodically, in our experience, there's been occasionally some clumsiness on my part, never on the part of the council, in how we move through ordinances in their first consideration to second consideration and appearance on consent agenda. And to be sure, as we work through, we have a number of appropriation ordinances this evening. Our practice should always be that the ordinance receive an introduction and a second and be discussed on its first consideration. And that way, by the time it gets to a second reading or appearance on a consent agenda, you've had that opportunity to fully vet and discuss the ordinance. Sometimes in the past, we've moved directly from introduction to consent agenda, and there's not a conspicuous opportunity for the council to discuss. So be clear on that this evening going forward.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, yeah. I knew that because we had talked about it.
Again, I think it's, the fault lies with the manager in most cases.
This is we're always great, thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda this evening is item 10, to consider introducing ordinance creating a technology zone in the city of Waynesboro to incentivize business location and expansion in the city of Waynesboro. We have Mr. Hitchin here this evening. Oh, there you are. Greg, how are you? I didn't see you over there. Thanks for being here.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, one of these headlines is not true. Can be, and we're here tonight to talk about a marketing program so that it can be true. This headline talks about a data center, and we'll talk about data centers as part of our conversation tonight, but really we're talking about technology of all shapes and sizes. Just to refresh your memory, Technology Zone is identified geographical areas of the city that we are focusing on certain types of industry based on their NAICS code, which we'll describe, and provide unique incentives to help to attract those businesses to our city. You may recall we had a work session on July 8th. At that meeting, we discussed how there's a statute, part of the Virginia Code, that allows municipalities to establish the technology zone and to provide incentives for the attracting technology companies to their jurisdiction. We talked about our competitive advantage, and I'll touch on that again tonight a little bit later. At the end of that meeting, we had a consensus for staff to continue to put together this program and to continue an aggressive implementation strategy. During that time, we consulted with a number of parties to get their interest, their feedback, and their expertise, including the State Economic Development Organization, the Regional Economic Development Partnership, our local higher education institutions, including SHEV, the statewide organization for higher education, business professionals, utility advisors. We examined documents from other technology zones around the state and some marketing professionals. Tonight's proposal also complies and is consistent with our economic development strategic plan and our comprehensive plan. So why? Why does this make sense? Technology will drive the future. You see it every day. Can't watch TV for a half hour without hearing about a talking faucet, an app to do this and that, or autonomous vehicles. Technology is the wave of the future, not only in our manufacturing industries, but also in separate standalone companies as they develop and devise and manufacture new technologies. Part of that is demonstrated by our own cybersecurity program in partnership with Blue Ridge Community College. As you know, as part of our Go Virginia application from 2 years ago, we supported the Blue Ridge Community College cybersecurity program. And today, we have a private company from Northern Virginia in residence in downtown Waynesboro with 5 employees doing cybersecurity work. Our competitive advantage: not only do we have a great place to live for the type of worker that might be considering a technology type company, we have a lower cost of doing business, generally a lower cost of living. We have significant fiber infrastructure, which we'll talk more about, with multiple companies offering high-speed fiber in various parts of the city. And we have 39 institutions of higher education within a 2-hour drive of the city of Waynesboro, currently graduating over just about 4,300 graduates in data science type degrees. Information technology and technology companies in general are a target industry of both the state and the region, and the state offers specific marketing structure specifically for technology and IT companies. We've talked many times about our searchable database. Technology Zone is one of the fields that someone can check off if they're looking for a location to operate in a Technology Zone company. The Shenandoah Valley is one of 3 regional partnerships in the state that is a Rural and Small Metro Technology Center initiative. This is an initiative by the State Economic Development Organization to focus on technology in rural communities. And finally, Amazon H22 made all the news over the last couple of years, which will increase the awareness of technology in the state. We believe might drive some technology companies out of Northern Virginia. But you also need to remember that part of the incentive package to get Amazon to the state of Virginia was $1.1 billion in higher education funding. That is called a Tech Talent Initiative that will be run by Virginia Tech, UVA, and other institutions to increase the number of technology graduates throughout the state. And the latest edition of Virginia Economic Development Review talks all about big data. I have a copy of this magazine in your mailbox tomorrow. But there's one paragraph in here that really kind of sums it up, and if you allow me to read it, it's where I quote it exactly. Virginia's abundant, affordable electric power and growing sustainable energy generation, its business-friendly environment, including state and local incentives for the data center industry, stable climate with minimal natural disaster exposure, and educational initiatives training the tech-savvy workforce all support the continued growth of data centers across the state. As we put this program together, we looked at 4 key areas. The first one is what parts of our city should be included in the technology zone. We considered a semi-scientific formula of zoning, available buildings and sites, and where the fiber is located. Our local fiber company shared with me where the fiber is located and where they're planning to go next. We looked at what industries we might want to consider. What's the technology companies of today? What is the technology companies of the future? How do we make this program specific to technology, but general enough not to miss anything that might come along the way? Finally, we looked at what kind of minimums do we want to establish? Do we want to make this a startup program? Do we want to make it a big company program? So what baseline do we need to establish? And finally, what kind of partnership do we as a city want to enter into with potential technology companies? So we'll go through each one of those individually. So again, based on where the fiber is located, based on where we have the zoning appropriate for this type of industry, and the electricity, and available buildings and sites, we're proposing we have 4 areas to be included in the technology zone. The downtown area, which includes the central business district and part of Broad Street near Willow Oak, the area around the Zeus Theater, the Waynesboro Commerce and Industrial Park, so the area behind the town center, which includes both city-owned property and privately owned property, and part of Nature's Crossing Technology Center, so the first 1,000 feet or so off of Delphine as part of the Nature's Crossing Technology Center. By offering these 4 areas, we can hit virtually any size company, from a smaller company looking at storefronts to go downtown, to a mid-sized company looking for their own space through an office condo situation or perhaps their own building near the Zeus Theater on Lou DeWitt and also in the Waynesboro Commerce Center, and bigger greenfield sites at Nature's Crossing and also Waynesboro Commerce Center. So what kind of business do we want to target? We looked at definitions from all across the state and other technology zones. There are 40 subzones. There are maybe 35 different definitions of what technology is. So we created our own based on some advice we received from those partners we mentioned before. So the company has to have the majority of the gross receipts from an advanced technological type company. We've established a review committee comprised of myself as Director of Economic Development, the Commissioner of Revenue, and a member of our EDA to review applications as they come in. And we picked 7 NAICS codes that we think are the target industry of today and the future. Part of the ordinance also allows for this review committee to review potential other NAICS codes as new technologies might come along. And just to remind you and our viewers what a NAICS code is, so it's a North American Industry Classification System. 2 to 6 digits defining what that company does. So this is not a technology NAICS code, but it certainly helps identify, explains what the different NAICS codes are. So the bigger the number, the more specific. You'll notice that we picked 4-digit NAICS codes as our example. So this would include these 4 and then any 5 or 6-digit codes that might fall underneath those. Minimum qualifications. We looked at what the wage should be, what the investment should be, and what type of employees, how many employees do we want to target. So we had the first item we want to talk about is the current average wage. So this, we settled on this as a published number from the U.S. government Bureau of Labor Statistics. So this number might move as time goes on, but it's the average wage for all workers in the city of Waynesboro. That'll be our baseline. So in order to qualify, a company must be paying all of their employees the average wage. So this would include professionals as well as non-professional staff. Total amount divided by number of employees must be equal to or greater than the current Waynesboro average wage. We figured a minimum investment of $75,000, which could be machinery, real estate, business personal property, and a minimum of 3 full-time employees. Partnership. All of the proposed incentives follow our standard protocol of a reimbursement for taxes or fees paid. None of the proposal tonight talks about cash up front. And it has to be 3 measures. It has to be the wage compared to the current average wage, the number of employees, and what's the total capital investment. And that those numbers and the agreement by the company would be solidified in an MOU between the city, the EDA as the pass-through agency, and the company. I'm not expecting you to read this. You have a copy of this in your packet, but I wanted to explain the 2 parts to it. The top part of this, which I'll go through in a second, determines the level of incentive based on those 3 criteria I just mentioned. And the bottom piece of that is a summary of all the types of incentives that we might be offering. And I'll go through each one of these separately. Top part of this, so again, it's a 3D matrix, if you will, based on the number of employees, wage percentage based on average city wage, and capital investment. So in this example, we have someone hiring between 3 and 24 employees, paying 150% of the current average wage, which is roughly $55,000 to $74,000 per year. And they're making it between a $5 million and a $20 million investment. They would qualify for our incentive table C, which would then correlates to the bottom part of that page you have in your packet. All of our incentives are between 1 and 5 years, depending upon the level. Again, they're all a percentage of the total paid in taxes or fees, and can include any one of these different items, from building permits, zoning review fee, site development fee, utility hookup fee, business license tax, business personal property, or machinery and tools, and real estate if they own the property. Based on the level of incentives, it could range, again, from 1 to 5 years, and the percentage rate varies based on the information you have in your packet, the bottom table. Forget to mention that this document here is an internal document. It's for us to evaluate and keep track of what incentive table they might be on. The client, the end customer, would see something like this, which is based on the information that they provide us and only lists the incentives that they would qualify for. A business attraction and marketing program takes a marketing budget to make it work. This is a list of all the things that we need to do to make this work and be aggressive as recommended by you. The red check marks indicate things that we've started already based on your commitment at the July 8th meeting. So we're devising a web page, a landing page, a specific URL for this project. We're designing collateral material around that. And we've developed an overall strategy and branding plan, as well as a launch social media plan. All the other items listed there are included in the department's fiscal 21 budget. This is a great story. We have a great opportunity, and we're looking forward to moving it forward tonight. Be happy to address any questions you might have.
Thanks so much, Greg. Anybody have any questions for Hitchin?
I have just one question. Looking at your map here, is there a certain type of building or land that you're looking at? And my question would be because on Broad Street, right across from the firehouse, the old Moore's lot, and then when you turn over on Mill Street and go up to High Street,
Yes,
that
sir.
one block there's a couple good buildings and a couple of them not so good. Do they not have the internet facilities that we need, or what's the reason we didn't expand it just a little bit to try to pull business into that area?
Sure, and we're certainly open to that. They did not show up on the fiber map for that, and they would generally not be a technology-type building, not that they couldn't be torn down and built. So we could certainly take a look at that again if you'd like me to do that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I just got a couple. So it actually carries on a little bit to what Mr. Allen shared, and it could just be in just another narrative, maybe not for this evening or as another memo, but relative to the enterprise zone. So we have the enterprise zone encompasses. We have our basic city plan that's underway, and our to a lesser degree, because that's more of a residential setting, but in the Port Republic neighborhood. And so, again, basing off of the limitations of fiber and the availability in the city, I would also be interested to see if not advocating for if we make the whole city, it's not going to have a whole lot of marketing potential. But I would offer that it would be helpful for me to understand why not certain properties, why not certain areas that we are also targeting for redevelopment and development opportunities. And so, yeah, so just echo what Mr. Allen said.
Okay.
The next is I'm certainly appreciative of the work, and I think as we've all talked about in our retreats and subsequent conversations with city manager, this council is absolutely laser focused on and building our new economy here in the city. And so I'm deeply appreciative of a strategy that gets something moving to this regard. I think that there's tremendous potential, and appreciate. I just want to acknowledge that and appreciate your work to carry that forward. Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. So are we doing that this evening?
So we're introducing and seconding and discussing. I might offer that I think Mr. Hitchin has several points that he needs to follow up on. We'll endeavor to do that informally between now and the next meeting as we approach preparation for our next regular business meeting. I'll look to council for some guidance as to whether we want Mr. Hitchin back to present and respond in person, or if the written material has sufficiently positioned the council to make a vote.
Yeah, that's okay. Wonderful. Great, thank you. All right, so we've got an ordinance to consider. Is there a motion to introduce ordinance?
So moved.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
Great. Any discussion? All right, we'll take this up at our next meeting. Thank you. Next on the agenda is to receive a presentation from Nicole Nicholson, Human Resources Director, regarding the City of Waynesboro's recent certification. This is great, through the Virginia Values Veterans Program. Ms. Nicholson, how are you this evening?
I'm good. How are you, Mayor Short?
Thank you.
Members of council, yes, I have exciting news, so this will be fun. We are excited to announce that the City of Waynesboro is officially V3 certified. V3 stands for Virginia Values Veterans. It is a Commonwealth of Virginia Department of Veterans Services program whose mission it is to educate and train employers throughout the Commonwealth on the value of Virginia's veterans, and to help employers connect with these personnel assets to maximize the productivity of their workforce. The Commonwealth of Virginia Department of Veterans Services is committed to assisting employers recruit, hire, train, and retain veterans. After meeting all the necessary requirements and completing the training, the city is officially V3 certified. We now have access to tools that will help us increase our awareness of resources that are available for veteran recruiting, hiring, and retention.
That's wonderful. Great. Thank you so much for sharing that with us this evening. Anybody have any questions, Ms. Nicholson? Great. Thanks so much for all your efforts. That's great news. All right. Next this evening is to receive information on an ordinance establishing a new Section 1 of Article 1, Chapter 86 of the City Code to provide authority for the adjustment of utility invoices. Mr. Shaw.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Mr. McCormick is going to walk us through a draft ordinance for your consideration. Tonight, we're simply briefing you on the proposed ordinance, and then we will bring that back to you at your next meeting and respond to any questions or comments that you might have. But prior to Mr. McCormick's comments, I want to give make a few comments, give some updates on the utility billing program of the city generally. And I'd like to acknowledge that the city has really gone through quite a number of changes in the utility billing area. In the last year, we've completed the implementation of a radio read technology for water billing. And essentially that means that all of the water meters in the city are outfitted with a transmitter that sends the readings for that meter to an antenna. We have 2 antenna locations, and then we download that information to create bills. And while we're still working through some of the opportunities that technology offers us, in other words, being able to have real-time reading that citizens can access, we can access that information now, or having high usage alerts, so that what can be done is that we would set up parameters by which any individual meter that exceeded a certain amount of usage in a set period of time would send off an alert, and we could notify a citizen that they might have a leak at their home or something of that nature. We've also implemented new billing software. I think the council is aware that the city has gone through a process of switching out all of its enterprise resource software. That's all of the software that we use for financials, payroll, utility billing, tax collections, issuing building permits and so forth. The software and the hardware that software ran on had reached well beyond the end of its life cycle, and so that project was recently completed, including updating the utility billing software. As part of that project, you really have a lot of opportunity to review your business practices, because you're basically trying to fit your business practices into a software. But it also demands that you adopt best business practices, and oftentimes the folks working with us on software implementation bring insight about best business practices in whatever the industry they're working in. And so we've been going through that process. Admittedly, we're also in a position where 3 or 4 of the positions that deal primarily with utility billing, customer service, are new employees in those positions. And as we go through some reorganization and revising business practices, I'll concede that we've gone through some growing pains. But I feel very confident in the folks who are engaged in these areas and where we're headed. Utility billing it requires cooperation and collaboration across multiple departments. You have a public works division that essentially manages the infrastructure and the customer service aspects of utility billing. In other words, maintaining meters, getting people cut on or cut off from the system, those kinds of things. Finance department, who creates a bill, and then a treasurer's department who collects those bills. And so as you look at all of the various functions, there are overlaps amongst all of those departments, and that includes a constitutional office. It is common that suppliers of public water and sewer service establish guidelines for how billing disputes or adjustments for excessive water consumption are dealt with. And the Code of Virginia does provide guidance in that regard. It has been the practice of the City of Waynesboro to provide leak adjustments on utility bills where a customer can demonstrate that they've identified a leak and the leak has been repaired. And they do that typically by providing plumber's invoices or invoices from, home improvement store where they've purchased items to repair the leak. And we've also established policies for rereading meters or testing meters where there's a dispute over whether the meter reads accurately or not. However, these practices haven't been codified, and so we're coming to the council to ask that you give a blessing and your specific legislative guidance that then we use to develop the administrative policies to implement that legislation on the day-to-day basis. So this evening, Cameron McCormick, the city's finance director, is going to walk through the draft ordinance and provide at least the highlights of the issues that are contained and that affect both making adjustments for high readings or leaks and/or how we go about dispute resolution or calibrating reading meters, rereading meters, those kinds of things. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. McCormick.
Great. Good evening. How are you?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So the draft ordinance provided to you adds to Section 1, Article 1, Chapter 86 of the City Code. It serves to codify what has already been the city's practice, which is to provide adjustments for high readings when the customer can demonstrate a leak. So it requires that the customer submit documentation to the city. It does not remove the right to pay or the duty to pay from the customer. Once we get the leak request or the paperwork that there may be a leak, we give the customer an advice to pay based on what we generally see and based on the adjustment we're allowed to. They're required to pay that. Once that's paid, we take them off of the cutoff list. We take them all off of all of the lists that apply late fees and things like that. Give them a reasonable amount of time to pay the bill. Section C provides specific guidance for meter testing, rereading, and estimation of bills. So from time to time, we'll have a customer request a meter be reread or tested. So we will reread the meter one time for free upon customer request. Any subsequent times within a 12-month period, we will require a fee for the meter to be read again. And then occasionally a customer will note they believe a meter is reading inaccurately. Generally, when that happens, we'll go out and we'll calibrate the meter, which basically involves running a couple of gallons through an outside faucet and making sure that the meter is reading in accordance with what we're running through. If at that point the customer still disputes the meter's accuracy, we can send it off. This ordinance allows us to bill the customer for that. A little bit of anecdotal information. We've done that 5 or 6 times over the last several months. Generally, the meters come back. I say generally, every time that we've done it, the 5 times we've done it within the last several months, the meters have come back completely accurate. Usually meters do not speed up. Generally, they slow down because they stop working. So Section D gives the Director of Finance the ability to correct any errors in mathematical accuracy of the bill. Section E provides a method for which excess leaks noted under Section B will be adjusted, and we adjust based on the 3 months average bills that don't have any leaks. Section F provides a few exceptions, giving the city the ability to deny an adjustment if there is clear negligence on the part of the customer that contributed to the leak. Also, if the customer does not diligently repair the leak. One thing that will be added to the final draft is that it provides an exception that if a customer has a difficult time locating a leak, that the city may adjust more than 2 bills noted in Section A, but not more than 6 bills. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them now, and this is just for your consideration. No actions needed.
Great. Any questions?
Thanks, Cameron.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. Next item on the agenda is to consider introducing an ordinance appropriating passport fees in the amount of $6,700 to the general fund to replenish the city manager's contingency account for expenditures related to a security window installation in the Commissioner of Revenue's office. Mr. Ham.
Members of council, you've likely observed the recent installations of the protective windows for both the treasurer and the commissioner. Originally, as the project was conceived, it was equipping the treasurer's office. Commissioner of Revenue saw The project communicated similar concern for safety and appropriate interaction with the public, and it was for efficiencies and effectiveness. The project was expanded to include the Commissioner's Office. We funded that through the contingency, and now we're reimbursing the contingency with the passport fees.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you. Is there a motion to introduce?
So moved.
Great, is there a second? Any discussion? This ordinance will be brought back at our next meeting. Thank you. Next, to consider introducing ordinance appropriating $20,801 of state categorical $4 for life funds to the general fund for pass-through to the Waynesboro First Aid Crew. Mr. Hamp.
These funds are collected from residents of the Commonwealth through their vehicle registrations. It has been Waynesboro's practice, and I would recommend continuing as such, that the funds be provided to the Waynesboro First Aid Crew to support their service to the community.
Thank you. Any questions? Is there a motion to introduce?
I'll make, okay.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, the ordinance will be brought to the next meeting. Item 15 is to consider adopting an ordinance appropriating a Virginia Tourism Corporation grant in the amount of $7,500 to the general fund to reimburse for advertising expenditures in the tourism department. Mr. Hamp.
Unless there are any questions.
Great. Questions? Is there a motion to adopt?
Adopt or
Is there a motion to introduce?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
second?
Great. Any discussion? Okay. This one we're voting on.
Yes.
With
Okay.
one reading.
All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 16 is to consider introducing an ordinance appropriating a portion of the assigned fund balance in the amount of $229,619 to the schools for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020. Mr. Hamp.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, members of council, you may recall an explanation of these. This is a restatement of revenue balance. We discussed this in our the work session associated with the presentation of the audit. These revenues are part of the funding formula for the schools.
Great, thank you. Is there a motion to introduce?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? We'll bring this up in our next meeting. Item 17 is to consider adopting an ordinance appropriating Valley Academy for the local divisions grants funds in the amount of $14,043 to the school funds for salaries and benefits. Mr. Hamp.
School grant.
Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 18 is to consider appointing a candidate to the Valley Community Services Board for an unexpired 3-year term ending June 30th, 2022. Mr. Hamp.
Ms. Mary Powell is presented for your consideration.
Great, thank you. Certainly very qualified. Is there a motion to appoint Mrs. Mary Powell?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 19 is to consider appointing a candidate to the Parks and Recreation Commission for an unexpired 4-year term ending August 31st, 2021. Mr. Hamp.
Mr. Jared Bissinger is presented for your consideration.
Great. Thanks to him. Is there a motion to appoint Mr. Jared Bissinger?
I'll make it.
All right.
Bruce made it.
All right, Bruce made it. Is there a second?
Second.
Great, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 20 or so is communication, correspondence, and calendar.
Only a reminder that we're having our first budget work session on this Wednesday at 6:00 p.m. here.
Great, thank you.
See you all there.
Yeah, see you all there.
This Wednesday?
That includes you, Mr. All right, with that, we've reached the end. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make it.
Great, any second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?